everybody, and welcome into another episode of the New England Sports Weekly podcast. And as always, I am your host, Sean Metcalf. I'm glad that you've decided to join me this evening as we roll towards the end of August. It is just chugging along, folks. It doesn't seem like it's should be this late in the summer. It just seems like just yesterday I started the podcast back in April. I believe it was the middle of April if I go back and look here. But yeah, it seems like it was just yesterday that this all started and we were just having a lot of fun together here. But it is August 25th as we timestamp this podcast. So we're just about a week away from September. I think September is the Wednesday next week. Yeah, actually, it's a week from today. So it sucks if you're a fan of summer like I am and don't get to enjoy this weather much longer, probably until the first couple weeks of September and things will start to cool off. But what it does mean is that football's back, baby. It is on the way. College football will start Labor Day weekend. I am a Michigan fan, so I'm going to get excited for the first two games, and then my season will be crushed about 3 weeks in. 3-4 weeks in like it normally does, because Jim Harbaugh can't do jack with this team, even though he has a bunch of players that get drafted into the NFL and just mismanages that. But that's totally different podcast for a totally different day. But if you're into college football like I am, it will be college football season here in the next couple of weeks. So have that to look forward to. And then with the fall coming here, or technically I know it's not until September 21st, but you catch my drift. With that in mind, the NFL will be, for the Patriots, will be on the 12th. And then that Thursday night, it will be on September 9th, it will be the Cowboys and the defending Super Bowl champion, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Or some people like to call them the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not me, because that's too cheesy for my blood. And we'll preview that in next week's show for you. So, and hopefully we're going to have some special guests on board working on that, tirelessly working on that for you folks. So we'll hopefully have some special people popping in on the podcast and hopefully make that a routine as we move on into the NFL season and beyond. But it has been an exciting week here, nonetheless, as the preseason week 2 has wrapped up. And the Red Sox are still fighting for the wild card spot here as well. And as well as we have some trade news in the NFL that involves your New England Patriots. We'll get to that here in just a moment as we in the out of the box segment. But it's been an exciting week as we wrap up this summertime here for you folks here in New England. But as I mentioned, we'll jump right into the out-of-the-box segment as the Boston Red Sox have, I wouldn't say heated back up. It'll be a little too generous. But they did take the series from the Texas Rangers, albeit in interesting fashion. Should have swept them, but nonetheless, you did take 2 out of 3. They had a walk-off in the series finale in the 11th inning to seal that series. Thank you, Travis Shaw. And then they did make it interesting again last night against the Minnesota Twins. So now the Red Sox, after some help from the Oakland A's, are now 2 games ahead in that last wild card spot and are 2.5 back of the New York Yankees as we sit here tonight. So the Red Sox are still, I wouldn't say comfortably, it's still 30 some odd games, 35, 34 games left to go in the season, but still they're in a decent position. You still have plenty of games left against the division. and and one more series against New York. Then you have 2 more against Tampa. Then you have some more against Baltimore. So you do have some room where you can play in the division. Obviously, the Baltimore series is more, the couple Baltimore series that you have left are more like batting practice rounds, as we saw in the last series in Fenway. But nonetheless, you have plenty of time against the division. Hopefully, cross your fingers, everything works out here, because there have been some up and down performances, to say the least, from the pitching staff, mainly that bullpen. They give you a heart attack every night now, unlike it was in the first half. We'll get into that later on in the show. But the Red Sox have hopefully figured things out. Now, one thing that still needs to be figured out is the Patriots quarterback competition. Now, there was some interesting news that popped up earlier in the week, as Cam Newton last weekend on Saturday, apparently, in the quote from the team, was that he was seeking outside medical attention, and outside of New England, he did get approval from the team, but because, and the only way that we know that he's not vaccinated, and I'm not going to start a whole vaccination argument. I'm not into that. We're not going to talk about that. But the whole point being is that we know that he's not vaccinated now because of the rules why he had to miss 5 games, because Cam Newton, after leaving New England to seek alternative medical attention, according to the statement, whether you believe that or not, he left, and because he was not vaccinated, you're not allowed to leave basically your home region, what the NFL sets. I'm not entirely sure what the whole mileage and parameters are, but basically with the Patriots, you're not allowed to leave New England. So in this case, he went home. There have been some reports out there. One was that he went to Atlanta. There have been a few others, so I'm not sure which one is technically true, because those are rumors, but the official statement from the Patriots was that he was seeking outside medical attention, that he did get approval, but there was misunderstanding with the league rules. So now Cam Newton, after he returned, has to quote unquote be quarantined, even though he's had negative tests, over this whole period. Everything's come up good, but he has had to sit out for 5 days. He'll be back tomorrow, which would be August 26th, which is a Thursday, which would mark that 5-day period since last Saturday. So things will have gotten interesting here as this week has rolled along, because what does that do? That means that your first round pick, Mac Jones, is now the number 1 quarterback in Cam's absence. Whether that turns into Mac taking the job, we'll touch on that later. But that has really made things interesting, to say the least, because from all reports, Mac Jones has been tearing it up at practice, the first 2 practices before they went down to New York, or technically New Jersey, where the New York Giants play, as they had another joint practice with the Giants. And from all reports, the first day was good. He got a lot of reps. He had a couple interceptions, had a couple touchdowns, but got to throw a lot. But today, in that first joint practice, apparently he tore everything up. He was on fire. Some reports where he had 40 throws, some reports where he had 45, but basically every report I've seen that's been down there, all the trustworthy ones, the Mike Giardis, the Tommy Currans, the not Field Yates, but Mike Reese, all the big time reporters that are right on top of it, that always report very sound and have reliable sources that you can trust. They were raving about Mac today. Got a lot of work. And some reports out there, a lot of them were just saying he missed 2 to 3 throws out of those 40 to 45 that he got, and threw a bunch of touchdowns. Obviously, this is all scripted, but again, he's working with the first teamers, and working against the first team defense for the Giants. So it's not like in the preseason. Well, we'll touch on that here in a moment too. But as far as it's not just like him playing in the preseason against the second stringers, the third stringers. So we're not talking about something where Mac's throwing against guys that are going to be bagging groceries here at Hannaford or Market Basket or whatever equivalent they're in their hometown. But the point being is that he's lighting it up, and really he took a hold of that job, and we'll see where that goes and if the Patriots reward him for that. But it's going to get really, really interesting because that window was really tight to begin with in that competition. Now Cam left that door wide open, not even ajar. That thing is flown open for Mac. We'll get into that here in just a moment. And some other Patriots news. Sony Michel, the former first-round pick in 2018, he was the later of the first-round picks because that year they had two. They took Isaiah Wynn, who's been a good, when he's on the field, has been a really good tackle. He struggles to stay healthy, but then Sony Michel was the 31st overall pick in round 1 of 2018. He came out, had a pretty good rookie year, and then in the playoffs had a historic playoff run. So everybody got pretty hyped for Sony Michel. Really had some trouble catching passes. And then I wouldn't call him a disappointment, wouldn't call him a bust. He was solid. He was a good starter when he was out there. But is he what an Ezekiel Elliott, what a Christian McCaffrey, what any of those first round, now I know those are really highly thought of first round backs, but I'm just saying, is that when you take a first round back, is that really what you're expecting? You're expecting a bell cow, somebody that's going to get 1,200 yards in this day and age, 1,200 yards, 13 on the ground, and then throw in another 200 to 300 in the air for 1,600. Now, is that what that's what you're kind of hoping for? Maybe not a prolific pass catcher that you would get from Alvin Kamara, just to put that one out there. I know that's a high lofty one, or with McCaffrey, but still the point being is when you take a running back in the first round, you're expecting a lot. Sony Michel was decent. I had Nick Chubb rated ahead of him, and we have all seen how that's worked out for Cleveland. He's been one of the better backs in the league, although I do like Damian Harris, so that might kind of negate this whole argument. But the point being in this is that they did trade him away to the Los Angeles Rams, and they are going to get back a 6th-round pick in the 2020 draft and a 4th-round pick in the 2023 round, the 2023 NFL draft. Hard enough for me to say on that one. Tongue twister for some reason. But when it comes to the Rams, I mean, they really didn't have much ammunition as far as the draft is concerned because they've traded everything in the kitchen sink for all those players. I'm not going to go through that whole list, but you just look it up. They've traded pretty much for everybody, most notably, obviously, Jalen Ramsey and Marcus Peters, and go on down the list. But they've traded away a lot of their picks. Now, they did get to the Super Bowl and lost to the Patriots in 2018. And since then, it's been a little up and down. But the whole point being, and that obviously they traded for Matthew Stafford. So they really, basically, they're just saying, we don't want our first round picks. Nope, we're good. We don't even want those second rounders. So if you're out there kind of bitching that, they didn't get a lot of back from the Rams, they don't have a lot of compensation to give back. And I don't know if I would even give up a first, or I don't even know if a second rounder for Michel. I think 3rd round would have probably been best case scenario. But we'll touch on that as well. So things have been cooking for the Patriots. So we'll jump right into that now, seeing as we've already kind of got our foot wet on this subject. Sorry, Rex Ryan, I don't want to get you too excited out over there. Just put it away. Please. Nobody wants to see that, Rex. But as we jump into these waters with the Patriots, so mentioned right off the top of the show, Cam Newton, he had to miss 5 days of practice. So he had to sit out those 5 days, couldn't be there physically at practice. He could still be on the Zooms, could still be there in the all the not old school, but what we got used to last year with COVID, had to be on Zoom, had to be on Skype, could be all on the virtual meetings, but couldn't be there physically to take any of those reps. So like I mentioned earlier, that leaves the door wide open for Mac Jones. I'm not even ajar, not even cracked. That just means that Mac can run away with this job if he wants to, or just run right through that door and just steal it away. And I mean, the job was already neck and neck. You know my feelings if you've been listening to this podcast for 17, 18 weeks now. I've been on the Mac Jones train as far as after he got drafted. We're not going to get, obviously, I wanted Justin Fields, but I still believe that Mac Jones is going to be a quality NFL starter. And I think he's got a lot of potential here, even in his first year. So I am on that Mac train. I'm ready for, and he's not really returning, but I'm ready for that return of the Mac. Cue that up, because that he's getting ready to be that starter. And even before this whole camp situation, just look back at last week. In game number 2 of the preseason, he goes out, plays a majority of that second, plays the whole second, plays a majority of the third. Yes, it was against the 2s and the 3s, and I know the Eagles did not play a lot of their starters. They only played 4 of them, I believe, so it's not like even Cam, when he was out there, got to play against a lot of those starters for the Eagles on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, they had the joint practices, so they both got a lot of reps there. And from all reports, they were basically kind of jockeying back and forth during that whole week. But the whole point here is that Mac Jones in that preseason game against the Eagles, throw the stats out of the window. I don't give a rat's ass about stats in the preseason, to be quite frank. Those don't tell me anything, to be honest. It really, what I want to see, if it's a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, any defensive player, lineman, linebacker, defensive back, it's not the stats. It's not, I had 4 picks during the preseason. Okay, you got that against Joe Blow from Wyoming State, came in and was the 3rd string quarterback, and he threw you 2 picks that game? No wonder why, because he was at a small school and didn't play Power 5. But the whole point being is that the whole thing is I don't trust the preseason stats. I trust the eye test as far as watching and seeing how they perform in the system that they're supposed to perform in, how they handle themselves. Does the pressure even get to them in the preseason? Just how are they operating the whole thing? And that's what I loved when I saw from Mac, because he went in there, his rhythm was great, his tempo was great. He went in there, ran that no huddle offense when we got into that not the second quarter, the third quarter of the game, came out, and it looked like, no, don't go crazy here, folks. I don't mean peak Tom Brady, but this looked like the old Patriots offense that we saw for 20 years, as far as having a guy that can go in there, operate the system to be really effective, to be surgical from a standpoint of you're dissecting the plays before they happen. Now, obviously, Mac Jones is a rookie, so in their preseason, but still, even in the reports that we'll get to later on, it looked like he played well against the first teamers. So the point being in this case is that he's able to make those decisions before the snap happens, even as a rookie. And the reports are that even when he makes a mistake, he's quick to adjust. He's not making those repeat mistakes. He's able to make the pre-snap judgments. And then even in last week's preseason game, the proof was in the pudding there. He ran that no huddle offense. He was able to check out of plays, and there were times where it looked like it might go wrong for Mac. Not a disaster, but the play might go wrong. He's able to step up in the pocket, find Gunnar Olszewski on 2 absolute darts, and they were. And I'm not kidding. Like, they were right drilled into the numbers for Gunnar Olszewski. And that first one where it was about like a 25-yard gain, 30-yard gain or so, he stepped up in the pocket, avoided the rush. He probably would have got sacked, but he had the wherewithal. Again, this kind of reminds me a little bit of Brady. Now, Brady's the GOAT. He's way up there, and Mac's got a long, 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 long way to go. I mean, and every other quarterback that comes into this league, no matter if it's Patriots or not, they have a long way to go to get to anywhere close to Brady. But the point being is, it just reminds me of now you have a professional quarterback that understands, that's smart, can read. Now, I'm not saying that Cam isn't smart. Don't mess that up. Cam is a smart person. He's affable. He's a very good leader. All that. You have to put that kind of disclosure out there, the disclaimer, of course. But the point being is, we saw that Cam Newton did have some repeat mistakes. He didn't clean a lot of that up. It was kind of disappointing because Cam's been in the league for 10 plus years, 11 years, and he's still making some mistakes that shouldn't happen over and over again. But now you have Mac Jones, who's able to go out there, and he looked like a professional quarterback, not just even a professional. He looked like somebody that's able to process everything the way it's supposed to be processed, make good decisions under pressure. Things are going to happen. No, there's no two ways about it. Things are going to happen. You're not just going to buzz through your rookie year and not throw interceptions, not make mistakes, but it's how quickly do you learn from it? And from everything that we've heard, Mac is great at learning quickly. And now, of course, before this whole thing with Cam happened last weekend, basically, it was close. And I honestly, I know I had been saying Mac was going to be the starter. Mac was going to be the starter. I was pounding the table for that. But to be honest, things were kind of leaning towards Cam because he really didn't fuck up. He really didn't. Everything was pretty good to decent, however you want to term it. He went out there, he ran it the way the offense was supposed, that Cam could run the offense. I still, even in the couple preseason games, I wasn't overly excited, but at least, hey, he made good throws. He made a good throw to Jacoby Myers down the left side. He was able to get in for about a 20 some odd yard touchdown pass. So he looked pretty good there. But again, those are throws that if you're an NFL quarterback, you should make. I still, when it comes to Cam, that whole not that he doesn't have arm strength, but he just doesn't have the touch. That's more what I'm saying, is he doesn't have touch. He just guns that in there, because there are a couple plays, especially that not the touchdown pass to Myers, but there was an early one in the first quarter where he threw a dart, and it was about 11 to 12 yard play to Myers, got the first down. I would have liked to have seen him lead him just a little bit more. Not far out where you're going to get Jacoby Myers killed, but I'm talking a safe lead where you're at least able to get him going. But it was kind of just, he got it to him. I'm not going to discredit him for that, but he got it to him, and it just kind of didn't give him that lead, didn't give him that momentum to at least get a few more yards. Now, I know you're over the middle of the field, so we can all debate that. But to me, it's just when it comes to Cam, he just doesn't have the touch. He'll just either gun it in there, and then when it comes to throwing deep, he just doesn't. It just seems like he's a little skittish to kind of throw deep. And that's, to me, that's still dealing with that injury. Now, if he's fully healed and then it's just a mental thing, that's totally different. And I think maybe at this point it might be a mental thing when it comes to Cam Newton, why he doesn't want to go deep. Just getting over that hurdle to this point, because after 2.5 years, almost 3 years from coming back from that injury, you should be ready by now. But maybe at this point, either it's a mental thing or you might be damaged goods to the point where, yeah, you're healthy, but your body just acclimated to that point where you can't get back to where you were before all these injuries really came into play for Cam. Now, obviously, like I said, he's a good leader. He went out there, made the plays he was supposed to, made his 8 of 9 throws for 104 yards and a touchdown against the Eagles. So I'm not going to discredit him for that. And if that was what he was going to be the first couple weeks, that's something that you could win with. Wouldn't be excited about it. And I don't think that's going to be something where you could sit there and feel comfortable facing when you have to face Tampa Bay in week 4, face Buffalo twice in the year, face those tougher teams where you can't just rely on decent to okay quarterback play. You're going to need maybe not top 5 quarterback, but you're going to need somebody that's got a little bit more oomph, a little bit more confidence in what they can do in this offense. So that's where I really was still on the Mac train from that standpoint. But I just thought that where Cam was playing status quo from the standpoint that he didn't make a lot of mistakes in these preseason games, besides the fumble, from all accounts, he was having decent practices. He would have some up and downs during training camp, but he seemed like things kind of calmed down just a tiny bit. So things seemed like they were going better here for Cam Newton as the training camp and the preseason were progressing. It didn't seem like it seemed like Mac and Cam were kind of equal. Maybe Mac in my eyes, Mac looked like he was probably just a slight step ahead, but nothing to the point where I thought where you could think that it was so far ahead that it was Mac's to lose. But then this whole thing, when it comes to, it wasn't COVID. It's not like he had COVID and got sick. For whatever reason, I don't know why he left New England last weekend, the reports were that the team approved him for whatever medical reason. To me, this reeks of CYA, cover your ass, just because why, unless this is some dire situation, like life-threatening, you got cancer, you have some other disease where, which kind of on a side note with all the Jimmy Fund stuff that's kind of happening this week with all the great doctors that are in New England, why the hell would you not want to get care up here? But that's besides the point. The whole point is just that why, unless it's in the dire situation or there's something going on where you can't see a doctor here, that you have to travel outside of New England for what? What is so bad that you had to get medical care here? So this to me smells of I BS'd my way to go see family or friends or do something that just doesn't smell right. Something that wasn't medical related, wasn't pertinent to his career. Now, I mean, obviously, we don't know the full story, and I would hate to say that, and there's some actual true, maybe family emergency or something. I don't know. Who knows? I'm not sure. But it doesn't smell right with just how the Patriots have kind of reacted to this, because the Patriots, after that statement was released, I believe it was the next day or maybe even 6 hours later, there was a report with an unnamed source, but it came from Mike Giardi of the NFL Network, formerly of NBC Boston, who released a report, who I trust very much with his reporting when it comes to the Patriots. Basically was saying that there was a high-level official in the Patriots that was not pleased, was frustrated with Cam in the whole situation. So if a high-level official, now I don't know if that's Belichick, but I'm going to say Belichick. I'm just going to take a wild stab at this and say Belichick, since he's the general manager and the head coach and pulling all the strings right now. But I would just put it to this, that if you have somebody saying there's frustration, to me, that doesn't mean that there's a family emergency, doesn't mean that there's a medical emergency or some situation where this was life-threatening or this had to be done, where if they thought it was okay for him to leave, but it really wasn't, and this wasn't something life-threatening where they're like, okay, so we gave you permission, but we kind of found out that this really isn't life-threatening. This isn't going to cause anybody to die here. Where we let you leave town, now it kind of feels like you pulled one over on us. So now we're pissed off at you because you broke our trust. What this really boils down to me is that this feels like Cam broke their trust. He was on thin ice to begin with, not because he had done anything illegal, not because he pulled an Antonio Brown or got accused of anything like that. Let's not go there, because there's been nothing to the sort that's been reported like that. But to me, he was on thin ice from the standpoint that, one, mainly your production last year was awful. And then you had the whole situation where last year, I believe it was in the off season, where you ended up going to the mall in the Braintree Mall, I believe, and buying some hat, and then he might have been out to dinner with a teammate, and that might be where the COVID was contracted. So there was kind of a little bit of thin ice from that standpoint, that he wasn't really being safe for the team. Now, honestly, obviously, those aren't things like, oh, going to the mall buying a hat or going out to dinner. Of course, I'm not saying don't do those, but because of the circumstances, when you're the starting quarterback, when the team is relying on you to be available every Sunday, and yeah, if the NFL rules suck, that, oh, you can't go do this and you can't do that, I'm not disagreeing with that, because of course I think you should be able to see your family, at least have some limited social interaction, be able to do that. But if those guidelines are in place, whether you like them or not, that's besides the point. You have to make sure that you're available for your team. Belichick always says the best ability is availability. Now, that's where you kind of have to put your needs aside, unless, like I said, unless it's some family emergency or something where you have to go, that you should try to abide as much as you can by these rules and regulations, just so that you're available. And that's what he did last year. It's kind of what's happening again this year. So it's basically 2 strikes against you, Cam. So why would they put any more trust back into you at this point? Yeah, you didn't pull an Antonio Brown, but still, you're the star. You're a wide receiver. To me, is totally different when it comes to you being relied on. Yeah, obviously, if you're Antonio Brown, you're at the time before. Not. I think Antonio Brown is still a good receiver, but this was before. This was before he kind of took any time off, and when he was still considered the first, second, third, or fourth, or at worst a top 5 receiver in the NFL. So of course you're an impact player, so you want to be available. I'm not saying that, but my point here is that your quarterback is the engine that runs this team. It really is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. A quarterback is the number one thing on your team that you have to put a priority for, that you have to make sure that your starting quarterback, if they're good, I'm not talking about any trash teams. If you're at the time, we all know Mac was an MVP, blah, 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 that he's earned all the accolades, blah, blah, blah. I know he hasn't won a Super Bowl, but you know what I mean. He was considered a good quarterback, so we're not talking about some scrub. So you had to rely on Cam. Now, what we know that things went way downhill last year, that he had an abysmal season, only had five passing touchdowns, and then, had the 8 passing touchdowns, and then had the 12 rushing touchdowns. So the rushing touchdown saved his ass. But the point here is that you were on thin ice, and you basically took their trust and kind of threw it in the trash here, because you whether you want to get the vaccine or not, that's entirely up to you. I have my own opinions. This is not a political. It's not, well, the vaccine shouldn't be political either. That shouldn't be involved in politics at all. But just because of how toxic that thing can be, I'm not even going to get into that. This is sports related. But the whole point being is that if you want to get it, get it. If you don't want to get it, don't get it. I'm all for that. You do you. But when you don't take it, you have to understand that there are rules in place, that you are going to be scrutinized a little bit more from the NFL, that, hey, we understand you have the right, but for safety and whatever they want to term it, you have to follow, you have to be a little bit more observant of, you can't go to these places, or whatever the guidelines are they set. You have to understand that I'm the starting quarterback. I'm being relied on here, and I'm in a battle with Mac Jones, who is looking good. And then what does he do? He goes away, gets not suspended, but gets basically on a probation for 5 days. He can't show up to any physical practices. He's not out there. And then what does Mac Jones? And then in an interview, Belichick gets asked if this is a big week for Mac. And point blank, just 2 words, it is. That's all Belichick said. It is. But that speaks louder than anything Belichick has said all offseason. It is. So Belichick is even, you can just tell the way that Belichick's come out in these press conferences ever since all this has happened, or even on Monday morning when he had his radio interview, that things were kind of, you could kind of tell things were kind of bubbling there. You didn't know until you kind of, it was a little interesting, but then when you kind of got context later on about the whole Cam, then that's where things really got interesting. And then when he got that question and he answered it point blank, it is, you know, that Belichick and McDaniels are now seriously thinking about that Mac could be that starter, just because that Cam is blown away. He's just thrown their trust in the trash with him. So switching over to Mac, who we kind of talked about a second ago, Mac has been unbelievable here in this week. Yeah, yesterday he threw a couple picks, but he's still got a lot of work. He got a couple touchdowns. He threw 35 to 40. And then today in a joint practice on the number ones, he was playing with the number ones for the Patriots. Jonnu Smith, we don't have Hunter Henry, but he has Jonnu Smith, Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, who he did throw a little bit to with the 2s, but he's out there with the 1s. So he's not just getting the chopped liver out here. He's getting the 1s. And then he's getting the first team defense for the Giants. And I know a lot of people make fun that it's the Giants and that NFC East division sucks. It does. Don't get me wrong. It does suck. But that defense actually is nothing to sneeze at. Now, are they going to be what the Patriots, what the 49ers, what even, not that Baltimore's 2000 Baltimore or 2012 Baltimore or anything like that, but they still are a good defense. You catch the drift. They're not a top tier, but they're probably like a number 17, 15 overall defense. So we're talking about somebody or a defense that's pretty good or above average. So we're not facing the Jets defense here. So you're getting a good challenge. And he went out there today, threw from reportedly 40 to 45 balls, only had 3 or 4 incomplete, somewhere between 2 to 4 incompletions, and had a bunch of touchdown passes. Now, yeah, you can say, oh, it's controlled. They script the situations, but yeah, you script the plays. You script, okay, we're going to work on goal line offense, goal line defense, or we're going to set it up with, okay, so it's 1st and 12, or you put it at, okay, it's goal line offense with 3rd and goal to go, or second and goal with about, 6 yards. And you can set it up, but still you have to execute that. So you have to execute it with the number ones. And from all things that we've heard, it's been coming up aces for Mac. He just killed it today. Killed it in the best way possible. So Mac is probably going to be the starter. And I'm so happy for that. And it has nothing to do with that. I hate Cam as a person. Don't at me with that. No, it's because I just don't think Cam has enough left in that tank anymore as a full-time starter. Maybe he could come in, start a couple games and look decent. But as a full-time, now a 17-game schedule, I don't think he has enough left in that tank. He's beat up. His body's seen a lot of injuries. He's just not the same Cam anymore. And if it obviously 2015 Cam, yeah, I'll roll him out there, an MVP, a good quarterback, and we could that would be obviously that would be great, but he wouldn't be here. He'd still be in Carolina. But when it comes to Mac, like we talked about off the top of the show, like I talked about all so far through this first 40 minutes of the podcast, Mac Jones has shown that he is every bit a quality NFL starter, at least what he's shown you that he has the ability to be. Gone out there, executed when he needed to execute. He goes out there in no huddle situations, goes out there in they put him in pressure situations. He comes through time and time again. And then when he messes up, all the reliable reporters out there are just basically saying that he goes out there after a mistake, corrects it in no time within that series, within I don't know, within plays. It's just basically been everything that you could ask for in a quarterback to be smart, cerebral, and go out there and execute what is given to you. Or guess what? If the play is called, and we saw that in the last preseason game, if the play is called and he doesn't like what he sees and he can audible out, I know you could be like, oh, all quarterbacks audible. Yeah, but guess what? You have to audible into the right situation. Any Joe Schmo can audible and be okay. We're gonna call trips right, Razor 59, Mike, and then guess what? You call into a play where it's a nickel defense instead of calling something where you should have called it into a formation, a run offense, or you should have called a screen, or you should to go against the blitz. I'm not going to go get all football hardo here on you, but you catch the drift. It's like he calls into the right plays. He doesn't audible into the wrong things. He's getting his team into the position where you can execute, drive down the field, and have an opportunity to put points on the board and have an opportunity to win the game. And then I think as the season goes along, I think we're going to see Mac get better and better. Am I going to say he's going to be an all-pro this year? No. But I think you'll see a solid rookie season where you'll see probably in the neighborhood of 25 to 28 touchdown passes, about 10 to 11 interceptions on the season. He's going to make mistakes, but he's going to put you in situations where time and time again you're going to be like, man, he's got what it takes. And then once you start to build the team around him even more, get some legitimate number one wide receivers in here that you can pair with these legitimate number one tight ends, the duo that you have, then you might be able to start not next year take the reins off of them, but maybe year 3, year 4, kind of like you did Brady. All right, floor is yours, Mac. We're taking the chains off. You go out there. You go whip the ball around. Let's see if you can we saw how that went. And hello, everybody on the live stream. Sorry about that. That's lost the internet connection here. So welcome back. Welcome back, and everybody talking about Sony Michel. So you probably heard off the top of the broadcast, Sony Michel was traded to Los Angeles Rams, and they got back a 2022 sixth round pick and a 2023 fourth rounder. So basically, jumping back onto this, Belichick has had a lot of faith, as we've seen here, in Damian Harris. So I really think, and what I've honestly saw out of Damian Harris, I saw somebody that was more explosive, was faster, more physical, and that you can rely on to be somebody to get you 1,200, 1,300 yards on the ground. And maybe if you can learn to catch passes a little bit better, maybe you're looking at 200, maybe 300 yards in the air. But that's kind of a little bit of a dream scenario. But hey, maybe if Max, the starting quarterback, he was a teammate of his at Alabama. So maybe might be a good thing after all. You got the two Alabama products in the backfield at quarterback and at running back. So all in all, did I want a little bit more for Sony? I would have liked to get a second round pick, but as I mentioned earlier, I just don't think that would be, I don't like first round pick is foolish. I don't think I'm going to get that for somebody that's not a stud running back when you can pick up those type of guys in the third, fourth round, as we've seen time and time again. You can get a stud later on in the draft. But second would have been nice, but to me, I would have liked to have gotten a third. I think that would have been more realistic to get a third round pick for Sony Michel. So I think maybe they could have tried to get a third round pick from the Rams. Although with all the picks they've sent out, I don't know if they have a third round pick left because they've traded every pick here until, I don't know, the year 2050, it seems like. So their cupboard's pretty bare in that draft pick department. How they even give up more for Sony Michel. So it'll be interesting, and I think that's probably, and because there's really nobody else out there that was looking for a running back, although maybe you could have gone to Jacksonville now that Travis Etienne is out for the year with that laissez-frank injury to his foot. So he's going to have surgery and be out for the year. Now they do have James Robinson, who last year burst on the scene as an undrafted rookie free agent and played his ass off and was one of the better running backs. But maybe as some insurance, you might go get Sony. But it just seems, but with obviously the season and ending a torn Achilles to Cam Akers, you knew that they were going to need another back there because you had Darrell Henderson. And I'm not big on the rest of their options. I know some people out there that dig deep into football, and I do too, but I'm just saying that some of those other quote unquote experts that are out there that kind of like what the Rams have going for them outside of Darrell Henderson, but I don't really either. And then of course Darrell Henderson does bang up his thumb, so they're already short. So you go get a starting quality back, not a stud, but you get a starting quality back in Sony Michel. So it's all around. It's a decent trade. I'm not going to say the Patriots walked away complete winners on this. I like I said, would have liked to seen them get a third round pick out of this. I think you could have, but all in all, it's a decent trade. It's nothing that you're going to write home about, and it's interesting to see now because both Sony, when he was here, and Damian Harris did have trouble kind of staying healthy. So it was interesting to see, say the least, to see if they could. Maybe I thought they might keep them there just because of the injury history of both of them. And if one of them goes down, then you have the other to back them up. But I think Belichick probably sees a lot more now in Damian Harris, and maybe he sees that the way that he's worked in the offseason, maybe he's ready to step up and be a little bit more healthy and be reliable for him. So we'll see how that goes. And the Patriots still haven't gotten a contract with Stephon Gilmore, so that's kind of upsetting. So we'll see how that goes. I'm still not worried because I think they still, before September 12th gets here, And I think probably once we get to next week with the cut downs, I think that's where we'll see them come to an agreement, because Belichick did come out and say that Gilmore is looking good physically and everything's going good that way. So I think everything's going to go decently here with that situation. And I think at this point, it'll be just a 1 year bump in pay, maybe 2 years, backed off a little bit on the 2-year deal. Although I still think that would be the best way to go. We'll see. But as far as right now, no news on Stephon Gilmore. Now, as we jump over to the Boston Red Sox, as I mentioned off the top of the show, the Boston Red Sox have won. They won 2 out of 3 against Texas. They won last night against Minnesota. And as we speak, actually right now, they're down 4-0 in the bottom of the 5th. With no outs. That's a little concerning that you're losing against the Twins, but we'll see here what they can do. But when it comes to the Red Sox, they are back in the last wild card spot. They're 2 games ahead of Oakland now. They're 2.5 behind New York for the top wild card spot, and they're 6.5 out of Tampa. So technically, they're not out of the division race, although that one feels like that one's going to be hard to climb back into, because you do have 7 games against Tampa. But just the way things have gone lately against Tampa, I just don't feel comfortable with them playing Tampa, New York. I'm not a full believer in New York. Like I said, I thought they were trash for most of the year. Now they to their credit, they played better, and I hate giving credit to that organization. That I just feel dirty after having to say that right now. But New York is ahead of you. There's still something in me that I just can't trust New York as far as this season's gone. So the Red Sox are in a decent position right now, but they're still on shaky ground, just because to win that Texas series, they were up 4-2. I'm sorry. It was 4-2 in the 9th inning. Matt Barnes implodes, gives up 2 walks. The Rangers end up getting 2 runs. They tie the game. It was a complete shit show. Barnes has just been unreliable since the trade deadline. But and then even the Texas Rangers come in and take a 5-4 lead. They get that ghost runner in. But luckily, Rafael Devers with 2 outs, it looked like the Red Sox were going to piss that one away. But then again, Devers steps up with an 0-2 count, belts one, looks like it's going to be a walk-off bomb, but he hits it in a triangle. Bogarts, who kind of looked for a second like, oh, this might be gone, and it's like, oh, I got to get on my horse here, scores. It's 5-5. And then Travis Shaw, and I'm sorry, let me rewind that. It was 3-1 in the 9th inning. So I had the score wrong there, but basically it was 3-1. But the whole other situation played out where the Twins got bases loaded. Matt Barnes walked and gave up the tying run. So it's 3-3, and then that's where in the extra innings the Rangers made it 4-3. The Red Sox came back, tied it at 4, and then Travis Shaw in the 11th inning hits a grand slam. The Red Sox walk off. So basically, the whole point there is that they had a rough time with a Rangers team that was hitting 196 after the All-Star break. They were 40 and 80 at the time. They beat you 10-1 in a sloppy, embarrassing game that Alex Cora came out and called them. He was embarrassed for that game. He literally said that it was an embarrassing effort in his post-game presser. So they weren't happy with that. So what did they come out the next day? Apparently they have a team meeting, and they almost lose against Texas. They almost lose a series against Texas. Against, like I said, a team that's hitting 196 since the All-Star break, and is one of the worst teams. If it wasn't for Baltimore, Texas might be the worst team in baseball. Outside of Arizona, who's probably on the same level as Baltimore. But basically, it's another bad team that you needed to. You can't say sweep, but you minimally had to win the series. But you really, really need to sweep as many of these series against these garbage teams as we get down to the last 35, 34 games. Now, The Red Sox won. They won the series, but it didn't feel right. And then you come into last night's game. I had something that was going on, so I hopped in the car, turned the radio on, and it was 9-4 Red Sox. I'm like, okay, good. You're playing against the Twins. You're up 9-4. I know they can hit home runs, so you don't feel entirely comfortable, but you're like, okay, this is a 5-run lead. They're probably going to tack on some more against Minnesota. And what do? They almost cough it up. It's 9-8 in the eighth inning. And then Kike Hernandez luckily comes up, hits a 2-run bomb. So like, okay, you got a 3-run lead. Then Matt Barnes, who has just been awful since the All-Star break, he's peeing down his leg again, basically, is what he's doing. He shows up and gives a solo shot to Donaldson, walks the next two guys, and he can't buy it out. You could take all that contract that he just signed with the Red Sox for the next 2 to 3 years, give him all that 17 or 20 million that he's getting. He couldn't buy it out with any of that cash. That's how bad he's been lately since the post All-Star break. I'm sorry, post-trade deadline. My apologies. It's just been that bad for Matt. And then Hansel Robles comes in, strikes out 2. Then they have a runner. They have 2 runners in scoring position. And then Robles battles and luckily gets this liner right to second base. At that point, it was a Royal that was in. And it was just, you finally got to exhale. But you can't even catch a break against these bad teams. Yeah, they're winning these games, they're winning the series, but you're still making it so difficult. And even tonight, they're down 4-0 in the 5th inning. And it's just like, I get it. They're all professional baseball players. I get it. But still, when you're playing these teams that are this bad, you have to take advantage. So it's a little disappointing that they're playing this bad against, not bad, but they're just playing just above water against these teams. Yeah, I know if you win, you win. It counts. It goes in the standings. I know all that. I get it. But if you're having trouble scoring runs, having trouble locking down these bad teams, how are you going to play when you have to face Tampa here after the Cleveland series, when you have to face New York again? How is this all going to go? It doesn't make me, I'm all warm and fuzzy inside right now. No, I'm kind of still a tiny bit of panic in me. Now like I said, you still have the wild card spot, you still have plenty of games, but there's still a little bit of, you feel uncomfortable because this is far from over. Now, if the bullpen can find a way to turn things around, then that's where I'll feel better because the offense is starting to click again. You're not scoring 5 runs a game, and I know tonight's kind of been an anomaly here versus some of these bad teams. But the point being is that it shouldn't be this hard against these teams, and the bullpen is the one that's really kind of let this team down. Garrett Whitlock, yeah, he's had a few bumpy, but Garrett Whitlock's been the one good arm minus a few bad starts, but everybody else has had bad nights, really bad nights. Garrett Whitlock, especially Matt Barnes, that's the one that really concerns me because if you get a 1-run lead, I am scared to death right now with Barnes on the mound. Yeah, and that's a polar opposite because in the beginning of the year, I felt really comfortable. He was locked down. It's just been reverse. He's awful. This seems like 2013, 14, 15, 16 Barnes, where it was good stuff, kind of nibbling around, and then he throws one over the plate where it just gets hit a mile because he's kind of nibbling and isn't as confident in his pitch selection. So it's really concerning because once you face these good teams, it's not going to be the Twins. It's not going to be the Rangers. It's not going to be the Baltimore Orioles that you're playing in the playoffs. You're playing these good teams. If you can't hold that 1-1 lead, then you could kiss goodbye to winning that one game wild card game. You could kiss goodbye to that 5-game divisional round series if you're in there. So I don't care if you score a million runs. If you're playing another team that's got a good offense, or decent offense, New York or even Tampa, that would be able to score at a good clip, what's going to be the use? Because then your bullpen's going to come in and not be able to lock it down. So I think at this point, what I would kind of like to see is you try in these last 30 some odd games, you put Whitlock into the closer situation in one of these games. You see how it goes. I'm not saying permanently or permanently for the rest of this season, but you try him, see how it goes, because he's been locked down outside of a couple rough outings over this about month stretch or so. But other than that, he's been still pretty good. And then the way that Tanner Houck, I was all for it for Tanner Houck being a starter, and that I was still gung-ho about that even last week. But just the way that the Red Sox have handled him, he's only gone into the fifth inning. He's on in the fifth inning, but he hasn't technically finished the fifth in any of his starts since he's been called back up post All-Star break. It's been 4 1/3, 4 2/3. So he's got electric stuff. But what I think they should do is take him, put him in the bullpen, put him in those high leverage situations in the 7th, 8th inning. Hell, maybe try him at the closer position for a little bit, see how it goes. Demote Barnes, but then you still have between Houck and Whitlock, Ottavino, and if Sawamura, who has kind of been up and down since his injury woes this season, maybe you find something there in the playoffs or towards that stretch run, and then maybe you bring up Seabolt, or maybe you pull Richards. I don't know if I want to put Richards back in the rotation, but you catch the drift. It's like you kind of have to try to experiment here and try some things out so that you can find that lockdown closer as we get closer to the playoffs, and so that you don't choke away this playoff run. So as far as the Red Sox are concerned, they're starting to find it a little bit more here. The starting pitching has been pretty solid. Chris Sale in his few starts has pitched pretty decent. Obviously, you're not expecting to be 2017-18 Chris Sale before he got hurt and was the All-Star game starter 2 years in a row. Well, 3 years in a row if you go back to his last year in Chicago, and was on track for a Hall of Fame career. We'll still see if he can get back on that. But the whole point is that, does he look like the top 5 pitcher that he has been for all of his career? At this point, no. But he's even admitted that he's kind of learned to pitch a little bit more. But if the velocity comes back, obviously he's going to take advantage of that. He's sitting at 94, 95, 93. So his fastball, it's the blazing fastball, the 97, 98, like he has had in the past. 99 can touch 100. No, but if you can, we've seen over time and time again, even in this day and age, look at Kyle Hendricks with the Cubs. You don't have to throw that super hard. If you can locate your pitches, you have good off speed, and Chris Sale has good off speed. That slider is a wipeout slider. Then you have a good starter there. You have Nathan Eovaldi, who's been your best starter all year round. Hopefully, Erod can figure things out. That's the one worry in the starting rotation. Nick Pavetta's looked decent, and depending on what they want to do long-term with Tanner Houck, not long-term, but what they want to do with the remainder of this season with Tanner, we'll see. And then the offense has started to score again. Maybe not as prolific as in the first half, but they're starting to find it a little bit here. It's just that bullpen. That's the one thing that worries me down this stretch run. You have to find a way to make some corrections, experiment there, and see what you can get out of that bullpen, because Barnes just ain't doing it anymore. Something's wrong. There's something mentally there that he's got a mental block that he can't get past. And they just have to figure out how to get him past that, work on that, put him in the 6th inning, put him in the 7th inning, try to put him in some of those older positions that he used to pitch in that were still decent leverage, or not the highest of leverage, but you're still in a tight game in the 6th or 7th inning, but at least you're not in the 9th where you're going to blow the save and have potential to lose the game. But really, that's the biggest concern that I have here as we go down the stretch, because like I said, there's still enough games, and I still have some faith left in this team that they'll find a way to get to that wild card. playing game, and I think they'll overtake New York to get the number one seed. But I'm not as confident as as I sounded all year long in the podcast, where I was banging the table saying, no, this is a big sample size, and it still is, but this is a big sample size. You got to believe in this team. This team's going to win the division, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, I never saw this type of funk. You can't call it a collapse because the season's not over yet, but this rut, funk, whatever you want to call it, this prolonged just suckness that they've been in. I couldn't have seen that. Nobody could have seen this. So it'll be interesting to see how this all finishes out. Now, of course, we'll keep an eye on that for next week and the weeks coming as well. That's going to be one of the top stories, along with will Mac get that starting position with the quarterback slot. They have one more preseason game to go. We'll break that down as well. And if Stephon Gilmore signs a contract, we'll keep an eye on that. And who knows, maybe Belichick will surprise us all and say Mac's the starter, but I don't see that happening until September 12th on game day at 4:00 when he has to name a starter, or however many minutes before the game goes that he has to name a starter. We'll keep an eye on all of that here. And of course, next week, planning on having a NFL season showdown or NFL season preview special, and hoping to bring in some special guests. So next week should be a little bit longer of a show, a little bit more in depth with NFL, not as much baseball, but obviously we'll touch on that just a little bit there as well. But we'll have our NFL preview show next week and at our regular time at 8:00. And always remember, follow me at Sean_Met28 on Twitter or at Instagram, same handle, or the show's handle at NE Sports Weekly on Twitter. And send us any of your questions, comments. Remember to hit that like button on YouTube or on Spotify or SoundCloud. Like and subscribe to any of these platforms. Much appreciated. Well, I will see you next week for our NFL preview show. Until then, everybody have a good week.